Instead, we have the opportunity to make a habit of empathy, to recognize ourselves in each other.
Should we have a little debrief of how you thought it went?
Yeah, I wasn't sure once we got going. I noted we didn't really start talking until about 10:15, so then I wasn't sure whether to go an hour or try to stop at 11. And then I didn't want to bring that up while we were doing it, so I just sort of went with it.
Oh, I was tracking the time. We went an hour.
Okay. Okay, good.
Hour and 5 minutes.
Okay, good. And then what was the other thing? Oh, I don't think I asked you that question about the specific question about creating conditions there. I loved what the conversation, that what I was hearing from Mutima and Eileen, and I was responding and so forth. So, but I'm curious how that was for you, Edwin, because I was kind of feeling, I'm wondering if that wasn't enough for you, if it didn't seem fair-handed in some way.
Oh no, I felt good about it. I don't have that experience in the schools, so I'm glad to, kind of defer to you all as having the hands-on experience. I think that was really good to, get your perspectives and have time for you all.
Okay. Those are mine. I enjoyed the conversation. It went by really fast.
Yeah.
For me. Yeah. That's me.
I have a lot to say on that subject. I think I dominated too much. I get a little overexcited.
Okay.
I didn't. Yeah.
You didn't experience it that way.
Okay, I'm glad.
Yeah, I was just experiencing like it's a really, it's something that's near and dear to all of your hearts. So I think that kind of came across for me. So it was kind of rich, had a richness to it.
Mm-hmm. So Edwin, since you have, I have my inside perspective and probably a lot of opinions on it, but I'm curious, from your perspective of listening to it, did some questions to guide another panel come up for you? Parts of it we could take out and look at in more detail?
Yeah, there's, for me, it's like, how do we kind of engage teachers in the discussion, like more teachers, right? Kind of expand. What do teachers want? What are they needing? How do we get teachers engaged and even wanting to kind of promote empathy in the classroom? What are the blocks to them doing that?
Time and money.
And
I had that very, very much in my mind as I, in approaching this call. I was thinking, I'm actually thinking to share this one with people I know from in the schools, and I wanted the kind of the practical, what actually works, and an acknowledgement of kind of how things really are, because the theory of it and that, oh, well, this would be a good idea and that would be a good idea is not going to land unless it's something you can actually do. So although I think this was actually a pretty powerful conversation about, hearing like the impact on the classroom if we actually stop and do these practices, and then my next question is like, well, how to practically implement that. But I found myself getting excited during a conversation, trying to stay focused here and yet going, oh my gosh, I could go over to the middle school and say, hey, let's do, here's some ideas for what we can do. I actually got some ideas popping up as we were talking, and I suspect that other teachers would too, given that, I'm not the only person in the world with this orientation. So I think it could have a practical effect or be a good introduction for teachers to consider.
Yeah, the problem is not a lack of ideas around what to do. In all my work, teachers are totally receptive and excited about it. It's that they don't feel fully supported by the leadership in the school itself, and by the district, and by all the federal requirements and standards. So it's one of those things that, it's been a grassroots movement, and there are so many teachers who learn about this on their own and are open to it and seek it out and love it. And so we've got the grassroots, but now we also need the top down. We need the leadership to value it and allow the time and money and professional development and experience for teachers to make it happen. They're really stuck in the middle in a way that that is paralyzing, I think, for the whole movement.
How about a panel of administrators? I know 2 principals I can ask.
That was what just came to me as well. Is I know Abigail or Abby. She's a principal at Aurora High School. I mean, I don't know, whatever school it is. So she was kind of, we were talking about this too, and Eileen met her when she was over here. So yeah, I mean, she would be another administrator. Perhaps there's another thing I was thinking of is that a dialogue like this can be that supportive mechanism, right, for teachers. They can say, well, here's the real problem I have, and here's a place where you can just, from the comfort of your home, have a space to talk about how to develop more empathy. So those are kind of 2 ideas.
That was cool, and I like that.
Yeah, and I think that that second piece happens, and I think without the first piece, it's difficult to implement because without support from the entire school community. And I think that principals, administrators tend to be, even if they're supportive, they share the same challenges. So I really think it would be great to get their voices for ideas of, you know, what can be done, and kind of some of the considerations that they have that I think sometimes other people aren't aware of, including teachers and so forth.
Yeah.
Whether they'd be willing to speak to it or not, but the principals at the 2 schools where I've been teaching might be willing to come on a panel.
Yeah. I mean, to me, what came up in trying to get elementary schools in Oakland to implement the mandated violence prevention, social emotional learning curriculum was that usually in programs like this, there's no accountability on any part. It's all voluntary. And so while we wish that that were enough incentive that teachers actually see the fruits of this, which they do, because there's no real accountability to the principal or to the district or to the state or the feds, but there is accountability in other curricular areas, that this is the first one that gets pushed to the side.
By teachers or by everyone?
By everyone, but by teachers, because there usually is very little assessment tied to it. There aren't numbers tied to it. There isn't a lot of research tied to it in the same way that, you know, history, math, science.
Although I think if we tie it into classroom management, though, that's a piece that gets people here, you know, because you'll have more time in your classroom for, you know, content if you address the social stuff.
You do. I think part of the problem is that teachers want to see an effect on student behavior, and we know that a lot of this stuff is more of a long-term, big picture kind of thing.
Right.
So I think it gets mixed up. It's not. Yes, it does help in the classroom, but I think the goal of it is not so much to manage kids' behavior and have them conform in a certain way. It's about opening them up.
Right, and understanding that initially you're actually going to hear more.
Yeah.
You know, it's bigger before it's. I mean, that was something that I experienced in going into this. So, and I'm using the term classroom management kind of as an autopilot kind of word for how people are relating in the classroom. And I agree with you that I am not a big component of, you know, trying to get people to comply. So that there's a big thing there.
Well, I'm up for getting some principals for some dialogues. I can ask Abby about it. And
yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting for me to ask. In our district, we have the district has developed this triangle approach, And the 3 points are rigor, relevance, and relationship. And
Rigor?
so I think,
Rigor, relevance, and relationship. Okay.
And relationship. And so relationship, they're actually, that's one of the 3 things. So I think that they may, on that basis, be interested in coming in and talking about, especially if it's framed around, how does empathy relate to relationships in school environments? That's directly tied to what they say their mission is. And I can think of actually another person who's a student, who's an educational services director, who's a level up from principal, who I also know, who might be, I could ask him. He's the chair of the climate committee for the whole district.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting to hear from some of the higher up folks if they're willing to, do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think there's some risk behind it that keeps a lot of people silent.
Yep.
That's what I found. But because it would be interesting not just to hear from them what works, but what are blocks, like how we ask.
Hey, Laura, it's Mutima.
Yeah.
There she is.
Yeah.
Hey, Mutima, we see you now.
Yeah. It's magic now. We can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I hear because I imagine they might say no because it's going to be recorded, and who's going to see it and what are they going to say?
Right.
Is that going to reflect on the district? And bullying is they're worried about lawsuits, and so there is that possibility, but I'm willing to ask.
Yeah, I am too. And a lot of times they actually want to, they're socially engaged, and they do want to make some kind of a difference, and they want to change the system and improve it and make more connection and problem solve. And
well, the middle school, the principal of the middle school where I was teaching, and I didn't bring this up on the panel, but I was thinking he actually has pushed to have this Sparks program, which is the PE. There's been some research about kids coming in the morning and exercising before school as a way to enhance learning, which is probably also related to brain stuff.
Yeah.
It's not a circle, but they did get that going, and the adults, everyone's welcome to come and participate in that. And they have that, and they created like a 0 period so that they could do that. He's also created a mentor program at the school, where teachers volunteer. I was one of them who mentor students.
Go ahead. That's fine.
So
we have someone checking our windows here. We're going to be getting new windows.
Okay.
So
I'm almost done.
So I just wanted, there's going to be a little clunking around here. So.
Okay.
So Sherry, that's all really innovative and really interesting.
So I'm just thinking he might be willing to weigh in on I think if there's an opening for him to share about what he's doing and how it relates to empathy, you know what I mean? Like it's not, if we don't narrow it too much in terms of how they're being asked, like if they're being asked to come and share what they're doing that really works, that would be a beginning into it, because it's going to tie in. If it's working, it's going to tie into empathy. So I would want to frame it in a way that they really feel seen and welcomed for what they know and what they're doing.
Well,
I also know a couple of teachers who are really involved in the LGBT rights and that whole piece in the district too. So if that's a piece that we wanted to do, I could invite them too.
Well, Abby was very interested in this and said we could actually do some experimentation at her school. So,
Is she the one you that she came? She was there when I called, and I think Eileen, you were at. Is that okay? That's who I'm remembering. Yeah. So.
Sherry, can you repeat the name of the PE type program? You said Sparks?
Sparks, SPARKS. Yeah. Yeah, and we've got one of our big PE kind of just a guy who took me aside one time about all my work at the school and said, Sherry, I totally respect you, and I just want you to know I'm just not into this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not, that's just not, this just isn't going to work for me, I love him. He's just been like, if you asked him to participate in a panel on empathy, he'd be like,
okay.
But he's the one who's teaching the Sparks PE.
Okay.
Wow.
So in his own way, so when there's room for people to kind of see, approach it from what works for them, it's pretty magical. So I think that's really cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
And that's
great.
with the support of the
I
principal.
think that-
So it takes a group to get these things going.
That's a great example on a meta level. Like if you're trying to get a teacher to teach a specific program on empathy, you lose people. But here, you know, he's been valued enough to bring in a program that works for him, that resonates with him.
Yep.
And it's going to be that much more alive when he brings it to the students.
Yep. Yeah.
Love it.
In fact, you know, now that we're, you know, I could see in, you know, an interview with him, not framed around empathy, but just specifically, but framed around what he's doing and how that, you know, I don't know if the word empathy could be used if he'd show up, but like I said, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear from him about why that works and how that's working.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like that just having this conversation kind of stimulates kind of like the next steps. So
Yeah.
See the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.